Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. This episode is a harrowing story of a little girl who led a life surrounded by drugs, crime, and sheer neglect. But no matter what life threw at her, she proved with a bit of sass and that streetwise attitude and know-how that she would become something pretty special in this world. Fast forward, she is now the entrepreneur of her own digital agency, and she's a co-founder of a charity which helps underprivileged kids get into the world of digital. Honestly, it's an amazing story. It is extremely, extremely brave, but it does prove that no matter what happens to you in this world, you can achieve success if you put your mind to it and if you want it bad enough. Breaking through the barriers of adversity. I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So Lisa, you are up next in the hot seat for the podcast. Thank you for being with me today, as always.
Oh, it's a pleasure. And I think it's a particular special day as well, being your birthday.
Oh, thank you. I know I should have had the candle backdrop, but never mind. Yeah. Damn. So for everyone tuning in, now you're obviously we're going to delve into your story in a bit. And I think people have to buckle in tight because I don't think they realise what they're about to hear, because it's pretty, I don't even know if there's words to describe it. But before we go there, if you could just tell everybody who you are and what you do.
My name is Lisa Goodchild, and I am the founder of a phenomenal charity, UK registered charity called Learning. I founded it with Sarah Wilson, who has been through quite a journey with me as well, which I'm sure her name will pop up consistently. We support us upskill and provide jobs to underserved, marginalised young people and people in general, upskilling them, helping them understand the different careers that they can take. And I also have a social media consultancy, and we've worked with some phenomenal brands throughout the years, from British Airways to Goldman Sachs. And it's been quite a journey in the beginning of social media to where social media now has been, brilliant. I love digital and I love tech, and it's a passion of mine. I'm a bit of a geek.
Well, it's not the word I would use to describe you, but now you can't mention it. So, no, that's cool. And obviously when we talk about your charity a bit, I mean, that really sort of molds quite nicely into your story, because I think you're doing it because of the life that you've had. So we're going to take a little whistle-stop tour back in time, just so that people can understand, you know, at the moment you're Lisa, you're the entrepreneur, you're the owner of this charity, amazing, but it isn't where you started, and actually you had a long hill or a big hill to climb. So start off with, where were you born?
I was born in actually Beckenham, Stone Park Hospital. So, but I didn't grow up in Beckenham. I then moved on to next door, which is we're quite a conservative borough, the borough of Bromley, and it's an area called Penge. And when you search and look for Penge on the internet, it says where they send all the poor people of Bromley. It's a great place. And also it has got gentrified now, so it is really cool. It's got street art and it's, you know, fabulous.
But away back when you lived there, then what was it like?
Oh, it was pretty grim. It was very dark. I remember the parks being full of like bags of glue, you know, lots of glue sniffing going on. I remember the estate, the Groves, and that was like a no-go area for the police. And you know, it was an interesting, there was a lot of drugs, an awful lot of drugs in particular. Also, as we go through my story, you'll hear elements of it. But yeah, it was quite dark, dingy, not very nice, people struggling all around you, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, where I live in Clydebank, I mean, I think it's much better now than it used to be years ago, because I've never left it. And, you know, there were certain points where, you know, the fire brigades were frightened to get into certain parts in case people petrol bombed their cars or their big trucks, you know, and everything else. So it was quite a scary place that we never went as kids because we weren't allowed.
Yeah, well, Penge is quite a small area as well, but it's where there's lots of connections there, and it's sort of got bombed out, in the war, and then they built these big council estates. And to be honest, we are very lucky because we're on the connecting end of Bromley. You've got, again, it's diversity of seeing what you can be, and I think actually we are one of the lucky areas because you do see quite a bit of diversity of what you could become, and you have a lot of professionals. But as I said, Penge is very cool now. Street art professionals have moved in, it's changing, which is, it's lovely to see as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's nice to see it built up now. So when you were brought up then, so you were obviously born where you said you were, and yeah, do you have brothers, sisters?
Yeah, I've got two sisters and two brothers. There's actually 21 years between my little brother and myself. Yeah, quite a big age gap. But first of all, it was me. Obviously, I'm the eldest. And then my brother came and ruined my sunshine. I swear, if none of them were born, I would have been in quite a good state. But where it stood, me and my brother, we're the same age for 10 days. So I think that my mum was a 19-year-old all on her own, not the most particular, not very supportive family around her. My nan had her own issues. It was a bit of a repeat of life, the cycle of life again. Many fathers, many children. But it was interesting. So me and my brother were the same age for 10 days. And then my sister Faye came and joined us. So we're like the really close knit. But me and my brother, we were really lucky because we had each other. So we grew up, just hanging, just going into the park. And as much as life was really dark and there was a lot of stuff going on, life was also brilliant, and you had this element of freedom. So we were climbing walls and knocking on doors. We used to hustle. We hustled from young, so we'd knock on doors and ask. We had someone we could go and get sweets from. We had someone we could go and get cereal from. We had to, there were good people in our area as we grew up. So that's what happens in a lot of communities that do have poverty. You do get some really good, beautiful families that go, I'm going to look after that person. They need it. So yeah, I was lucky.
Yeah, we always need good people like that in our lives. And it's funny you're talking about the age gaps. There's 22 years between me and my oldest brother, and there's 7 of us. So I totally know what that feels like. But the next gap's 11 years. So I never had that kind of person that you could buddy with. So that's quite nice that you had that. That's good.
Yeah, it's special.
Yeah, it is. And so you've talked a couple of times, and I know we're just at the beginning, but you keep talking about the dark times. So do you want to start opening that door and give us a little look inside?
Gosh, we were like the bottom of the council estate. So there was there was lots of people that, there's different layers on a council estate. You've got people that have maybe got a job, you've got maybe 2 parents, you've got all of that. And we was in a block, and they used to call it Mini Cane Hill, actually, because it had lots of people with mental health issues. One being my mum as well. And it was really, really grim. There was always people with mental health issues, and I mean extreme mental health issues, so schizophrenia, which was an amazing place to grow up because it gave me such empathy for people with mental health issues. So, I've had to help people throughout my life and try and help them find help. And I think the way and where I grew up enabled that. So yeah, it was very, very dark in terms of that noise. And my poor mum, she obviously suffered as well from massive depression. I think, probably postnatal depression. She's up and down, extreme, like bipolar. And gosh, there was not many things that weren't broken in the house. The whole house was broken. We didn't have gas and electric often. Again, me and my brother were amazing. We would hustle, go and ask for £1 or 50p, I think it was back then. That's if we didn't chisel open the gas meter and reuse those coins, like half of the general public back then in the 80s. And also, it was a really grim property as well. Like the walls were full of sodden with damp. I just remember plates being smashed because of stress, my mum just not knowing what to do, crying a lot. And then we had a lot of drugs and things like that around us as well. Not my mum taking them, but my stepdad and things like that. And it was, seeing someone injecting heroin and things like that. It's just as a young person to see those sites. And when I think about it now, it is a bit like a horror movie, but it was a great learning. And I was lucky that I feel like very blessed that I had that journey, because now I want to change things. And, you know, we're losing some of the most amazing talent out there. And as your title of your podcast says, there's people that can have such magical careers if they just have a few mentors, if they just have, you know, the door open from a pathway in. So yeah, that is why I'm so passionate about my charity as well. And the kids that I grew up with, watching them, so talented. You know, we grew up in the UK garage days, so they're all, you know, DJing and they're MCing, and then the next minute though they've got a gun and they're playing with it, and, you know, shooting it, and we were all just hanging around, and, you know, or I'm watching my friend get stabbed in front of me. You know, it was just so normal. And I think that also desensitizes it makes you so you don't even see it as an issue. You see it as it's a normal thing. And if everyone around you is doing that, it is a problem, and it does become a problem. They were entrepreneurial, these young people. They were really, really smart kids. But because they, you know, especially quite a few young black boys, you know, we were very lucky that we had that diversity element around us. And a lot of these black boys went to prison. And you know, it was because they were black, you know, it was. If they were white, middle class, posh kids, they wouldn't have gone to prison. And they go to that, you know, that awful youth prison, and they learn. It's like a training ground for a master's or a degree, and then they come out and they've had their record tarnished. They haven't learned anything. It's just it's an awful cycle. But, you know, at my age now, it's so sad to see some of these people, because you just know how bright they were. And if they just had a mentor or a bit of a different opportunity, or just, you know, my brother was lucky. My mum knew a lawyer, so she got the lawyer on it, and he was lucky. He was a white boy, yeah. So he also had, again, a privilege. There's lots of different privileges that we all take for granted, and they're just mini privileges that it's sad. It's very sad. And we all know that the prison systems are full of people who have been on these journeys. You know, if they check any of these people's background, most of them have been abused as children, have been through massive trauma. In particularly, we know with the youth offenders prisons, 50% of them have been through the childcare system. I mean, if that's not the biggest travesty ever, I don't know what is. So yeah, it is very dark in those places. And what was amazing were things like the youth clubs, you know, them teaching us like photography, and being able just to get out of those spaces that it was dark, you know, it was grim. People were taking drugs around you, and, you know, noise, just angry noise. Yeah, it's and then how are you supposed to get out of that? Yeah, you got to be quiet. You've got to have some people to watch, you know, a little angel on your shoulder. And I was lucky to have someone like that.
Well, we'll come to your angel in a minute. But, you know, I think the thing that's really striking, and, you know, you because I know what it's like when things are tough, it's easy to say the words and talk about it because you're not going back and reliving it. But for a second, you know, you were talking about your stepdad injecting heroin. So you imagine you're this young kid. How old were you?
I was about 11.
Okay,
No.
so imagine this 11-year-old, and you see this, like, what's racing through your head?
Well, I was like, oh my gosh, I better get out of the room. You know, that's and it again, in all this, I was, you know, it was part of the family business. So I was selling it as a kid. And when you actually, I think, when you see that, and when you see people going through that, I was very blessed to be that smart not to want to take it, and very blessed to think, you know, that is not what journey I want to be on. And actually those people were probably prime examples to me on why I wouldn't go down that avenue, but I might not have been. Yeah, and you are presented with a lot of dangers that are normalized in those in those pockets of poverty. There is terrible stuff that's normalized and very accepted, and it is really, really sad. And it's PTSD. It's, you know, I mean, I'm really lucky. I've always spoken about my journey. I think that's helped me heal in a lot of ways. And also the work that I do with young people, I mean, watching them build a bit of confidence and being able to apply for a job and get a job, and, you know, it's just amazing. So yeah, I'm lucky, but there's a lot of people that weren't that lucky and have ended up in prison, or, you know, there's many stories that my story could have become.
And at what age did you start selling it then? And what were you selling?
Heroin, 13. Yeah. And I've burgled houses. I've stolen stereos. I did do this all as a child, okay? Anyone? And I won't do any of it now. I'm at the thing. I think the thing that stopped me from even wanting that world was my uncle's friends. All it's a big story. They all got shot. The Essex boys in a Range Rover, and I think that was when I thought, God, you don't want that life. You know, that is not the life you want. And I knew. Also, I just knew I was a bit different. I do remember my English teacher though asked me what I wanted to be, and I said, well, I'm going to be a gangster or a high class hooker. You know, basically, I mean, she must have wanted to beat me. But when she told me I was going to get an F, I thought, there's no way I'm getting an F. Right, I've got to get a C. It's the only GCSE I've got, guys. I've got a C in English. Everything else is below. School wasn't great for me. But it's because it's the way it was what I was living. You know, when you're living that noise and that. You haven't got, I talk about this privilege that we've got, and my daughter's got a beautiful space that she can focus on and do her homework, or she's got equipment, a computer, or she's not hungry and she's got food in her belly and she's got internet and she's got warmth, and all of those things we can all take for granted. And all right, it may not be our problem. We can say that, okay, it's not my problem, it's theirs, they've had kids. But then it is a problem in the end because it's a society problem. And if everyone rises, we all rise together. It makes a better society for everyone. You know, your house gets burgled, who are you going to blame? It is society that causes a lot of these problems when people they might have dyslexia and being treated like the bad kid throughout school, when we all know now that people with dyslexia are superheroes and that are super business people, but have not been able to channel that because school went, oh, I don't understand, you're not ticking the box. There's a lot of boxes going on and we've got to get rid of them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you know, it's funny because even from talking to you for the first few minutes, and this sort of tells me everything everybody needs to know about you. So every time I ask you a question about you, I can see very clearly you're talking about others and how you were lucky and others are more unfortunate than you were. And, you know, so you can see the caring gene, because obviously that was built into you from a young age. But, you know, you were saying like when you stole you never stole houses, that'd be miraculous. But when you went in and broke into houses, were you doing that for your parents or were you doing that just for you?
For the life we was living for my parents. It was for, you know, if everything I done. I think I was very lucky actually when I got to be able to go and get a job. You know, I was always working doing, you know, babysitting that, but when I was able to go and get a job and then I could buy shopping for the house, and you know, our struggles were just that ridiculous. We weren't living it up. We weren't, you know, there wasn't no fancy cars outside, that sort of drug dealing. I mean, my uncle, he did used to pull up in a Ferrari, but we wasn't that blessed to be that type of drug dealer. He's not with us anymore. But you know, there wasn't that. It was to eat. It was for us to, you know, to really just survive. So yeah, anything that we did do was survival of the air position that you're in. Yeah.
And is that all you ever knew then? So, I mean, you know, it's tragic in so many ways. And obviously it's molded you to be an amazing human. But at the time, I mean, I can't even imagine being hungry, needing food. Like, is that all you remember? Or was it a certain age when this started happening?
No, it was a certain age when it started happening. It was really when my dad wasn't in our life. So my dad, you know, he went off and disappeared for quite some years. I'm blessed to have him back in my life and being amazing. And, you know, I can get him to fit my kitchen and things like that. He is brilliant. And he's just, you know, again, he clashed with society and was quite a genius, person. Yeah, sorry, can you just repeat the question again?
No, it's fine because I think these things they take you down so many paths. Yeah, what age were you then when this all started happening?
I would say around 6. And then that's when it started getting really tough, and when my stepdad really came into our lives, because you know, then it was trauma with my mum. She was mentally unwell anyway, having to deal with him being a heroin addict, then my sister being born. You know, it was a lot of stresses, but then brilliant stuff, you know, crazy stuff starts happening. Like my mum, she got a job in Soho and was working on the doors in the clip joints, which was life-changing for us because she went out with this guy called Mario, and he owned some of the clubs and he paid for me to go to Malta. But we did have diversity around us. We were lucky, as much as we were piss poor in Penge. We had a weird family. So my nan, my mum's mum, she was brought up by a lady called Countess Cathcart and went to boarding school. But I didn't know this until later on in life, because she left that when she was 16. She didn't want that life and ended up going out with like not very nice men and had children, and not the greatest life. And then on my other side as well, on my dad's side, we've got like the Sir Richard Needham, the Earl of Kilmorey, and I met him when I was 30. So you've got this, actually, it just shows you how easy it is for money and for your whole life to change, or for somebody in your family, their whole life to be the polar opposite of yours. So I was very lucky. And my dad's family as well, like my granddad was David Bowie's interior designer. I had creativity all around me, but my mum, because she suffered from mental health issues, and that's what's very sad about mental health issues, is people don't know how to deal with it. So people would rather stay away from that situation. So, okay, Karen, she's not that well, right, let's leave her with the kids. And we can't see her. We don't know what's going on. We didn't have Facebook back then, did we? So should have been going now. She would have been putting statements up there. But back then, you couldn't do that. You were sort of left to your own devices. And she was a single parent. We all know in the 80s, it was like, single parent, one of those, that she had lots of labels. And bless her, she was struggling to bring up all of us. So what ended up happening was we ended up doing stuff as a family, surviving and keeping it all together as a family. But what was brilliant was when my life started changing, and I went to college and I did a GMVQ in media production, and I loved it. It was like equivalent to A-levels, and it was brilliant. And she came to college with me. So then she got a job, and that's, she worked in that job for about until COVID, and she got made redundant. It was Gatwick security, and now she's security somewhere else. So, in Brigades, Bromley. So it just shows you, she, given the position and given the confidence, she was like, oh, I've seen this job, maybe I should apply for it, got the job. If she had been given that confidence when I was a kid, my life would have been so different. My life would have been so much more like my brother Giovanni's, who was born 21 years ahead of me. And also he was lucky to have a really good sister and a brother, and, older brothers and sisters who were there as well to support. And, mum needs support and help. So, yeah, it started quite young, but things change, and they went up and down, and everything was a learning. I must say, I do feel like I've had a lot of blessings as well, because as we all know, there's a lot worse life we can live. I'm born in London, a female, that's just a plus.
I know it's harder in bloody Scotland, so it's really hard to crack into these big companies in London when you're so remote. So yeah, at least thank God you had something that was really going for you from birth. So thank God. And so when you, obviously, I think everybody listening or watching really gets the picture. It's quite grim. The place is sort of falling apart. It's a rough area. There's drugs all around you. You're, to an extent, would you say you were neglected? Is it fair to say those words?
Definitely, more than neglected. I used to take the brunt of being beaten and things like that because of people being, my mum being stressed. So it was actually interesting. I was going to do media fight night because I always said I'm really good at dodging a slap. So I was very tempted, but Sarah Wilson was like, no, your nose is too amazing. You are not fighting.
You're too beautiful. Yeah, exactly. Jeez.
I used to fight a lot as a kid. I wasn't I was quite a handful. I wasn't, I would say I was the nicest teenager because I was struggling so much.
Yeah, because I can imagine, it's a bit like people that are often bullied, whether it be by parents or other kids, tend to vent on other people because it's just a natural cycle of releasing, I guess, that aggression and the grief. Frank Carter from the Rattlesnakes, when I chatted with him, he was talking about how his music and this sort of angry punk music was his way to vent his frustration and anger in a really safe way. And that just really rung in my ears because I thought, oh my God, I guess people that have been through tough times need a place to vent. But unfortunately for you, it was with fisticuffs and the
yeah,
street. And so were
it
you? Did you think did you pick on other people because you were?
Actually, in another interesting one was I remember arguing with Rachel Reeves, who's the Shadow Chancellor of the UK in Labour Party. She's amazing, and I went to school with her, and we had an argument in the corridor, and I remember having I remember getting dragged into the office. Like, she must have just nipped it in the butt, because I was one of those. I was a damaged young person, and the school had no idea what I was going through as a young person. So how they're going to, and for them to deal with it, and they've got 30 kids in each class and all these young people going through, there was some other kids that had gone through stress. But yeah, what we was observing as young people, it's damaging. And also, there wasn't one thing that didn't cross our paths. Everything, the trauma has crossed our paths in one way or another, or touched our family. And we're not unusual. All right, it's not every family in I suppose, in every situation, but there's quite some big pools of that bad effect. And I think it just causes so much badness in society, and it doesn't need to. I was lucky, though, to find things like yoga and meditation later on in life, and I think those things really helped me. Running as well. I've always been quite athletic and sort of channeled my energy, and I only was a bully probably from the age of, I'd say, 13 to 16, 15. It was a couple of years, like a little bit of a, and it made me popular. That was it as well. I'd come from this place where I had to struggle, and punching a couple of people made you really popular, and no one messed with you. It was quite normal.
Yeah, it was about your street cred.
Yeah, it gave you street cred. Yeah.
God, I was on the other side. So I never got beaten, but I used to get mentally abused a lot in school. And then now I think about it, it's like, I wonder what went on in their houses. And maybe they were just bad to the bone anyway, or maybe they had a reason for it. So I was never quite sure. I don't know the answer, in all honesty.
I think sometimes it's people have got problems. I think, I always tell my daughters, please just be kind. If you see someone there sitting there in the playground and they're on their own, go and ask if they're all right, because it's not nice to be left out. And it's made them really grounded humans, and they don't seem to get involved in the politics, and they do seem to do that. It's not always going to be perfect, but I think if you go by those morals in life. And I was lucky, I did have a lot of kindness around me. I had kind people, people that did try and help us, people that were always trying to make our lives better. I was blessed in that way. And some people don't have any of that. They don't get taken to the seaside. And there was kids that I grew up with who hadn't seen a beach, and not even kids, when they'd hit 18, they still hadn't been to Brighton, 50 minutes down the road. I was lucky to have that diversity of stuff. You can be, you can't be what you can't see, and seeing stuff.
So true. And so you talked earlier about your guardian angel. Who is this amazing person?
Well, so Sarah's mum, Maggie, is just the most amazing lady. And, she was the one that's encouraged all of us to go to university, and also used to feed most of us as well as teenagers, because she had a cheesy machine, the school squishy ones. So that was a speciality there. But Maggie, I've had the most phenomenal women. I couldn't be sorry, guys. There's some cool men in my life, and bless the ones that have given me a shout out. Rob Blake, I got you. There's people out there that have really had my back. Andy Oakes, but the women, I mean, hands down, gosh, I wouldn't be where I am today without them giving me the confidence in believing in myself as well, and telling me, I've got it. I've been on quite a career journey through, be it like entrepreneur. When I finished uni, I got a first. But what was a game changer as well is when I got 96% in the class on our first piece of coursework. That was also where I was like, whoa, I am the same. I can make it in this space. And I think times like that throughout my life, like, people have given me opportunities, and I pinch myself and go, why did they invite me? What am I doing here? This is amazing. Or, I remember years ago, probably 11 years ago, and social was getting a thing, but it wasn't massive like it is now. Everybody now knows it's really important, but for years was knocking on doors going, it's really important. But June Sarpong, she used to have this thing called Women in Enterprise and Inspiration. And I remember her saying, do you want to do a workshop? And I was like, yeah, okay. And then on Social Media 101. And then I got there and like my name was on the window of the hospital club with like, I don't know, Lady Rothschild and Lynn Frank and Kanya King. And again, another lady who's given me ridiculous platforms and believed in me is Kanya. You know, these women, Shah Osman, Mary King Dawson, Melina, it's the women who have gone, Lisa, and you know, Ellie Edwards Scott, you know, Julia Smithy, we would call her now, but she won't like that, but Julia. Vic as well at Ginger Mate. There's so many people who lift me and tell, and I just didn't think I really had anything that cool going on. And they're like, you know, they made me believe in myself. So I'm very blessed to have the most amazing women that have opened doors for me, believed in me, lifted me, told me, you know, come on, Lisa, especially like Mary. I mean, MKD is on a different level, right? She's just, she's like, yeah, she is like my, she says mum now. She's like my mum. I say auntie because she looks way too hot to be my mum.
But she's amazing. I mean, all the people, just for people tuning in, you know, everybody that you've rounded off are people in your business and career world. And I know many of them and I can vouch for you. They are amazing people. But obviously that's you as an adult. But Lisa as a child, you know, you've obviously, you know, and I probably don't even need to summarize it that much. People have got the memo here. So it's tough. You didn't do well at school. One GCSE or whatever the grades are in England, but you got one GCSE.
And I wouldn't even get into university now, and they would not give me a student loan because they're only giving this. Well, they're considering it. They're considering stopping student loans for anyone that hasn't got a maths and English GCSE. I mean, hello, you know, just cut off all of, you know, the little pathways that we might possibly get into university now for us, you know, underserved and marginalized people.
Well, how did you get in then? So what was the rules back then? So obviously if you didn't do well at school, how did you get into there or college?
So I was really lucky. Yeah, I sort of blagged my way in to do the media production course because I did this awful business administration course. I say awful, but I did learn to touch type, which is the best skill ever. So I did a secretarial course, you would have called it 20 years before, but it was business administration. Did that. That was equivalent to 4 GCSEs, A to C level. So that got me on to the media production equivalent to A levels. Applied to university, found this course. It was in Greenwich. I only lived down the road. It was a digital media Bachelor of Science at a computer science school. I just thought, oh my God, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And I don't know why. I've always loved tech. I've always been a bit nerdy in terms of like, you know, my uncle gave me a robotic arm, and just I remember going to the Royal Albert and Victoria Museum as a kid with school, and it was just brilliant, and it was all sort of cool tech. So yeah, that was a real introduction to my, you know, degree, which my degree was just brilliant in terms of our lecturer, Tony Mann. He was the head of, he's brilliant. He was the one that he said, come and do, I contacted him and I said, look, I haven't got the qualifications because I didn't get through. And he said, come and do a maths and English exam. And he said, have an interview. So I went and did a maths and English exam, and I had an interview, and he said, okay, you're in. And then, like I said, that first piece of coursework, getting like 96%, and that was a game changer for me. It really, really made, and I've actually got the coursework. We found a video of my, it was my digital CV, and literally I can hardly even talk. I mean, I've got to put it out there. I'm going to get it, and you'll just crack up. There's a video of Adele as well when she was about 15, and we do sound very similar to each other, but it's awful. And that's a real problem, you know, is how much you discriminated based on your accent. You know, we actually think people who are posh are intelligent. There are many, many who are not. On all sides, you know, intelligence should never be measured by the way or your accent. It's ridiculous, but it is. But yeah, I managed to get into university, sat at the front every single day, and came out with a first. That was phenomenal. Came out and it was a dot-com crash. Was like, what? There's no jobs.
Oh no.
Oh, there was no jobs. It was hilarious. Anyway, I was lucky at university. I started building websites for people and sort of making some money on the side hustling. There was a lot of footballers, record labels that wanted websites, and nobody was really building them. And I started building them. So I made quite a bit of money doing that. And then I went traveling for a little while. My dad came back in my life, and that was a real blessing. I went to the Caribbean and went to done a lot of traveling around Spain. So that was amazing. And then I started working for a guy called Dan Wagner, who bought the boo.com software. So from the crash, he had bought the boo.com software, and he had created a shop in a box. And it was e-commerce times, and we were taking, it was exciting as well. It was like Ted Baker, Panasonic, Mothercare, when they were first going online. So trying to convince them to get online, and, you know, it's going to be really cool. People will buy your stuff. So it was a small team in Soho Square. That was brilliant. And then I fell pregnant with my daughter, started a trend at the office. Don't think Dan was too happy with that, but he was a brilliant boss. You learn a lot from Dan, you know. He's got lots of investment, and things have, you know, spiraled in control and out of control. But he's a brilliant person to learn from. And he is also still a friend, actually. I did take an idea to him after I had my daughter, which was a shopping comparison website, a beauty shopping comparison website, which was so ahead of its time, because this was like 13 years ago. So no one was really, you know, we had the blogs and that, and we had a bit of social media, but nobody was really doing the beauty stuff. It was like Lauren Pope, and people were doing bits. But he invested, and me and my business partner was like, Dan's an angel. I was like, nah, I'm not playing this game. And I went, right, I'm going to go and set up my own social media agency. So I went off, and I went, because I'd been working, you know, we had 11 blogs, 2 shopping portals by then. So So You, The Beauty Quest. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. And I went and set up my social media agency. I was very lucky again to have Shah Wasmond, who's a dear friend and quite an entrepreneur, like ridiculous level boxing. She was the first female boxing manager. She worked with Dyson. She was his PR company. So she helped set up Dyson at the very beginning around his table. Like, she's a real, you know, she was like, Lisa, you know, question, making me realize and dig deeper as well. And also giving me, I'd never had someone like that was so business oriented. I'd had a lot of men around me that were business side, and obviously I'd had a lot of illegal business around me as a kid, so I picked up loads and loads of business tips. And me and my brother, I mean, on the last quarter of the year, we had Halloween, which was trick or treat, which we made a lot of money out of, and a lot of sweets. Then we had Penny for the Guy, which was obviously firework night, and we would literally get mum's clothes, stick it with paper. We'd be there for about 2 weeks for Penny for the Guy. And then obviously we had carol singing as well. So that final quarter was really productive for us.
My goodness, a young child entrepreneur. Well,
Oh,
it sounds amazing. See, the thing is, you kind of again, you make it sound dead easy, and this is how you're so humble. But, you know, so you went to, I'm just going to take you back a bit just so people can understand this little step change. So you finished school, you managed to get into college to do a course, and you got your uni, and you were doing really well because you were driven. But, you know, the part you said you started selling, like, the idea of building websites or different social things for footballers and stuff. Talk me through that. How do you find them in the first place, and how do you convince them to use you?
I don't know. I've always been quite magical at that. I don't know. People say, Lisa, you're a really good networker, and I'm like, I've never intentionally gone, right, I'm going to go and network. I'm going to go to an event and make friends. But, you know, I've no idea how I've always done a bit of research, looked. Like, I remember even having to put together a CV as a 15-year-old. I had no one around me who had a CV, you know, example. I remember going to the careers office, finding some examples. My mum had purchased a word processor typing sort of typewriter, but with a little bit of a computer element in it, so you could sort of type it on this little mini screen and read it and delete bits. Yeah, that's the stuff that we were doing back then, wasn't it? And I remember I added like a orange line onto it, and it was all because of the way I did things and made the extra effort. And I have no idea how I knew to do that, but I always made the extra effort. And go into every single shop and smiling, standing there straight, doing the things that you're supposed to do. And I don't know how I knew how to do that either, because people ask me that. I did watch a lot of black and white movies as a kid, so I don't know. I was like, I used to sort of, watch a lot of TV as a kid, but also be out and about, but a lot of like crazy black and white movies. So I don't know whether I learned some elements from there. I have no idea where I picked it up from, but finding those clients was just talking to people and getting out there. And that was the magical thing about where we grew up as well, because we were, the kids that people didn't want their kids playing with and things like that. Me and my brother, we moved around, we went all over the place and found kids. There was a women's refuge around the back of us, so we would always find the kids there, and there was a rotation of kids. But what it gave me this, it's great. We'd have people from all over the world, but it was such a good learning, because it gave you the confidence and also the skill to be able to talk to anyone. And I didn't have confidence as a person, when I was younger. I couldn't speak publicly. I could never speak on panels. I used to just completely freeze. And I've always, if I'm not confident or I feel like I can't do something, then I will try and do it more. So I will go, and try and improve. So when I couldn't speak in public, I said to my lecturer at uni, can I come in and talk to the young people more? And he said, yeah. And I got, you improve. And I remember also watching Richard Branson and thinking, he really doesn't give a shit. I'm not going to give a shit. Like, who cares? And it's about, I suppose I've got to an age now as well where I really don't give a shit. I'm just doing it what I want from the heart. I have no idea what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, but it comes in my head. I do some research. I work it out. I find a route.
But you always find a route. Do you know, there's one thing that you said actually that's the same as me. I don't know if you know this. So the only reason I am where I am today is because I could touch type.
Yeah, really?
And that got me into it. That's why I got my first job at the Sun newspaper, because I remember I went to uni for 1 year, right? And I was about to get thrown out, so I left before I was thrown out because I thought it would look better, just in case. And I remember saying to my dad that we had already lost my mum and my brother. And I said, look, I promise you I'll get a job. And he was like, because he was really worried because he was getting older. Yeah. And we had the Sun newspaper, and there was a job advert for a promotions assistant stroke copy taker. Now, I didn't have access to the internet. I didn't go to the library, and I had to get in and work out what a copy take. I didn't know what any of this meant. And the only thing that it said you had to have was like different skills, but touch type. And I thought, that's the one thing I can do. And I remember getting into this interview and just hustling, and it was almost like I had nothing to lose, because I didn't think I was ever going to get it anyway. So I went in with a very different mindset. I wasn't really that nervous, and and I got it. It's a similar story. How fun is that?
Yeah. And it is about that. It's about, just pushing those boundaries. And I think, at this age now, I ask and I try. If you don't, if you get a no, it's next opportunity and you move on. Exactly. And I think actually growing up the way we did probably gives you the tenacity to be able to get through a lot and to bounce back. And it was something that I spoke with Kanya King, who founded Mobo. There was 9 of them as kids. She had been put in a care system as well, mainly due to poverty. And it's exactly that. You learn COVID was bad. It was bad. But when you grow up the way some of us grew up, it doesn't touch the surface. You can survive. You got a roof over your head. And actually, I was in great position. I live in a great house, and I could get to the shops, and I had money to do so. So, it does give you the skills to be able to really, really survive in tough times.
Yeah. And I guess what your story tells us, and I think it's probably similar to mine, I didn't intentionally go out to do what I do today. I think it was like I latched on to the one thing I was good at. That was my stepping stone. Then I learned something else. And then before you know it, once you get your break, everything starts falling into place. And then I think one thing that you've got, for you clearly is the hustle, right? So you've got the hustle, but you're also a people person, and you had to learn that through tough times, because you had to get fed. So you had to convince people to feed you or whatever it might be. So that is like desperate times. But now, you know, even when I worked at the Sun, I used to spend a lot of the day just chatting to people, just to get, and I wasn't doing it for any contrived reason than just, I'm a bit nosy anyway, and I quite like people. Sometimes I don't like people, but most of the time I love people. But, you know, but so it sounds to me as though once you get your foot in the door, you were good at building sites and things, then everything just clicked into place. And then it became, unless I'm wrong, it sounds as if it didn't really become planned after that. It just became serendipity.
It didn't become planned. And I was extremely lucky. As I said, Shah came in my life, and that's when I did my social media agency and everything. And I was lucky to do the Marketing Academy Foundation as well. Gosh, that was 9 years ago now. And that was life-changing, because you go through such a journey and you meet such brilliant people. And don't get me wrong, when I was in the room with 30 people, I was the different one. Again, you know, I was the one with the accent. Everyone thinks I'm from Essex. I'm like, there's many forms of common people. Is your education that limited that you don't realise I'm a South East Londoner? You know, but I did feel, you know, a little bit of an alien, but they were such beautiful people that they then made me feel, again, they were like, oh my gosh, you're amazing, Lisa. And it is the people around me that have lifted me. And that was a brilliant, brilliant journey, because it was all about, you know, the living leader, this amazing lady called Penny Ferguson, who does the living leader. And she just teaches you about, what's your passion? What do you want in life? You know, how to, talk to people, how to get your message across. It really took me on quite a journey, and I think it was that's when I started knowing that I wanted to do something for all people. Really, I've always been passionate, especially about women, but young people from underserved and marginalized backgrounds, you know, because all people do need help. And at the moment, actually, there's some awful reports where have just shown it doesn't matter where you're coming from, actually, as a young person, their confidence has been stripped. They're not getting taught the skills that they need to get taught. They don't understand the industries that are out there, and it is a real problem. And COVID has, you know, knocked some of these young people, knocked their confidence. And it's time. And what's beautiful about when we bring people together on Digi Learning on our programs, you know, 80%, 90% are from the UK, but some of them are from different countries, and they're all from all over the UK as well. And just watching them all come together and build this network and, you know, really, really connect with each other. Like, young people don't see boundaries. The older generation, I'm afraid, do. And it's something that the older generation are going to have to get used to, because these young people are here to stay. And actually, they're going to be looking after us soon. Just to say that, people, they're looking after us. We need to look after these young people and ensure that they have the confidence and they have the pathways to progress, because there's some talented, amazing people out there.
And, you know, that's what makes you such a wonderful human. You know, the fact that you lived what you lived, and now it must feel so good that you give back to so many people, because once you see them, you know, you're building their confidence, you're helping the people that are broken and damaged in different ways. And then to see them being accepted, whether it be a job, a placement, whatever it might be. I know I'm mentioning one of your brilliant people right now, she's amazing, you know, that must just be a real sense of pride to know that, you know, if people didn't help you, then where would you be today? So I guess it's, you know, giving back.
Yeah, totally. It is giving back. And it really, like you say, it's such a journey watching these young people, and having Sarah by my side as well. You know, Maggie was my guardian angel when I was a youngster, Sarah's mum. And Sarah's been through she was in uni with me as well. We went to college together, uni together. She took a year out, went traveling. I stayed at uni, and she went into the more corporate route, training, Euro money, and I went to the Entrepreneur, and then we've come back together. And having her by my side, and she really understands me as well as a human, gets how I tick, and is there, you know, because we all have times when we you know, all doubt ourselves or don't get stressed, you know, don't know what you're doing in life, and Sarah's there to cheer me on and to support me. But life, it can throw some really, really big balls at you, but you can learn to juggle them, and you can learn to catch them. You can definitely learn to dodge some of those balls.
I couldn't agree more. Even Jim Kerr from Simple Minds said, if you've listened to his interview, he was saying that when one of you have an idea, people might think you're crazy. Yeah. But when two of you are in it together, everybody else is crazy. Yeah. You know, and I think that sounds like that kind of like sisterhood that you've got with Sarah, who's also amazing. So, I mean, see for you, like, you know, I guess you know, I talk about working class people. Now, this isn't just about working class people. It's about people that have overcome adversity in different ways. But obviously working class is the key hook for everything that I'm doing here. But do you think there's certain things that working class people have that others don't?
Yeah, I do. I think they can solve problems. You know, when I look at my younger sister, she's got 5 children, and she was like, I've got no skills. I've got, you know, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, you feed 15 people before you feed yourself a day. Okay. Right. Let's just imagine that's a skill in its own. You know, the things that get chucked at you, the situations that you deal with on a regular basis. You know, if you were just given a time to breathe and the beauties of some of the privilege, like my beautiful young daughter has, you know, a beautiful surrounding, as I was saying, to study. And if you've just given those elements, and just a hug sometimes and things like that could just, you know, change your path. You get so stuck in, as I said, what's around you and what's in your bubble. It's yeah, a really dangerous situation what we're playing.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I think this is probably one of my favourite chats actually of this series, because literally, if you put it down on paper, you're the person that shouldn't really be where you are today. If you look at it in black and white terms, you know, you defied all the odds. I mean, who would have thought 11-year-old kids watching our stepdad inject heroin, robbing houses, selling gear? I mean, friggin' heck, like, you're living proof that if, you know, anyone can do this. But obviously what you've got is a tenacity, the hustle, the dream, the belief, and you're giving it back to people. So thank you so much for being part of this.
Oh, thank you. And I want to say thank you to everyone that supported me, because I would not be where I am without the amazing people that have given me the confidence and have told me I'm great. And you, Lynn, asking me to come on this, you know, again, another pinch moment. So thank you for everyone. Let's change some more young people's lives, because
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Thank you.